Before we get into some of the most badass combat and fight scenes in Korean cinema, which are all contained in the same movie by the way, we've got to talk about the opening sequence. The opening sequence is what you're watching on screen right now. It's such a cool way to open a movie. It's worth watching this movie just for the opening sequence alone. It's quite possibly one of the best opening sequences in world cinema. Oh, and the movie we're talking about in this video is called The Villainess. This is the movie that contains all the best fight and combat scenes ever. We'll get to those clips in just a sec. But first, let's just admire this opening sequence. The whole movie begins with this POV continuous shot of a female assassin making her way down a corridor of a factory, kicking the shit out of about 50 bad guys who are all trying to stop her. I'm having to cut sections out just to avoid the copyright, but this shot all happens in one continuous shot. It's really cool. The girl in the POV shot then gets to a room full of tough martial art boxing kind of guys and then kicks the shit out of them all. The 5-minute long POV shot ends with a very impressive transition shot, where one of the bad guys grabs her and then smashes her head into a mirror, which breaks the POV shot. Then we see the protagonist of the movie for the first time. But the shot continues as she beats up the rest of the guys in the room. The girl then jumps through a glass window and comes face to face with the police. The shot, still moving, continues and pushes in on her face, and at 8 minutes and 17 seconds, the shot finally cuts and shows the title of the movie, The Villainess. Let me know in the comments if you know of any other opening scenes that can top this one. Right, let's get into some clips of the best fight scenes in world cinema, all contained in the same movie. Right, let's get into it. The first badass fight scene on the list is this one, where the main character, the Villainess, is at a assassin training camp. She gets bullied by some of the other girls, and she gets her own back by showing that she's no pushover. The realistic choreography and the camera movement make this a great moment in the movie. The storyline of this movie is the Villainess is a highly trained assassin combat expert, who after killing a bunch of people, gets caught by the police. And to avoid jail, agrees to work for the government using her killing skills for good. And in this next clip is one of the jobs she gets assigned by the government. The Villainess turns up to an enemy's house with a silenced pistol, but the homeowner is awake and defends the house with a machete. I love how this sequence keeps switching between first person and third person throughout the scene. And again, the camera movement makes the scene look so much more dramatic. It makes you feel like you're actually there in the scene with them. The scene ends with her stabbing him, and fair dude, he does put up a good fight, seeing as he's only wearing a dressing gown, and it never comes undone throughout the whole scene. Pretty impressive. And I've left the most badass scene till last. Near the end of the movie, there's a fight scene that takes place on a bus driving through the city at night. The Villainess is an assassin combat fighter who is hired by the government to kill some bad guys who are in a criminal gang. But the gang's leader is her dad. So they're in a situation where they don't want to kill each other because they're father and daughter, but they kind of have to because if they get captured, they spend their lives in jail. This is a very cool action night scene that takes part on a bus, where she fends off bad guys and is left on a one-on-one fight with her dad. The handheld camera style movement makes you feel like you're on the bus with them. I mean, hats off to the driver for driving with all this going on in the background. He must have nerves of steel. I noticed he didn't ask them to buy a ticket. They completely smashed up the bus. He could have at least asked them to get an adult single going into town. Anywho, later on in this cool scene, the bus crashes and then tips over after the girl chops the driver's hand off with an axe. The Villainess survives the crash and in her tight leather trousers, not that I noticed, walks out of the wreckage, but not before chopping her dad's head off on the way past with an axe. And there we have it folks, some of the best fight scenes I've seen in a while. Leave a comment down below of any movies you know that also have some badass fight scenes. Thanks for watching.